So the topic for this video will be measures of dispersion. Now the French philosopher Michel Montaigne once said, quote, "There never was in the world two opinions alike, no more than two hairs or two grains. The most universal quality is diversity." Unquote. See, just as central tendency it can be measured by a number in the form of an average, the amount of variation or dispersion or spread or scatter among the values in the data set can also be measured. Okay. Now the measures of central tendency describe that the major part of the values in the data set appears to cluster around some central value which is called the average, and the remaining values are scattered or distributed on either side of that value. But these measures of central tendency, they do not as such reveal how these values are dispersed on either side of the central value. Okay. The dispersion of the values is indicated by the extent to which these values tend to spread over an interval rather than cluster around an average. Now the statistical techniques to measure such dispersion, we can say that they are mostly of two types. Which are they? Techniques that are used to measure the extent of variation or the deviation. It is also called as degree of variation of each value in the data set from a measure of central tendency, which is usually the mean or the median. Okay. Such statistical techniques, they are called as measures of dispersion or variation. And then there are techniques that are used to measure the direction away from uniformity or symmetry of variation in the distribution of values in the data set. Such statistical techniques, they are called as measures of skewness. So to measure the dispersion, to understand it and to identify its cause, it's very important in statistical inference, which means in the estimation of parameters, in hypothesis testing, in forecasting, and so on. Even a small dispersion amongst the values in the data set, it indicates that the data are clustered closely around the mean. The mean is therefore considered representative of the data when the dispersion is small. Okay. But on the other hand, if there is a large dispersion amongst the values in the data, then the mean may not be actually representative of the data, and hence we need to study the measures of dispersion. Now just to highlight the point what has been said earlier, let us see this example where we have got the data over a 6-year period about the net profits in percentage of two firms, so firm A and firm B. Now if you calculate the average for both the firms is the same, which is 6. Okay, so therefore the operating results of both the firms are equally good, and a choice for investment between them, however, should depend on other considerations. But average wise they are the same, average is the 6. But if you look at the difference amongst the values, okay, in firm 2 it is greater. That means the profit, the net profit, it varies from where? It varies from 2 to 12.1. Whereas in firm A, what is the variation? The least value is 5.3 and the highest value is 7.2. So what does it show? It shows that the values in the data set 2, that means for firm B, they are spread far more than that for data set 1, that is for firm A. So this means that this firm A has got a consistent performance, whereas firm 2 has a highly inconsistent performance. So therefore, for the purpose of investment, the comparison of the average or the mean profit values alone, it should not be sufficient. Now we are going to see briefly what is the significance of measuring the dispersion or the variation. See, this measuring the variation, it is needed for firstly testing the reliability of the average. So measures of variation, they are used to test to what extent an average represents the characteristic of the data set. Now if the variation is small, that means the extent of dispersion or scatter, it is less on each side of the average, then it indicates high uniformity of values in the distribution, and the average represents an individual value in the data set. But on the other hand, if the variation is large, then it indicates a lower degree of uniformity in the values of the data set, and then the average may be unreliable. Okay, no variation indicates perfect uniformity, and therefore values in the data set are identical. Now another significance is to control the variability. See, this measure of variation, it helps us to identify the nature and causes of variation. So such kind of information, it is useful in controlling the variations. So according to this Spur and Bonini, what they say is, in matters of health, variations in body temperature, pulse beat and blood pressure are the basic guides to diagnosis. Prescribed treatment is designed to control their variation. In industrial production, efficient operation requires control of quality variation, the causes of which are sought through inspection and quality control programs. Okay, unquote. Now in social science, etc., the measurement of inequality of distribution of income and wealth, it requires the measurement of variability. Then again, we require the measures of dispersion for comparing two or more sets of data with respect to their variability. Okay, so we can measure or compare the spread in two or more sets of data with respect to their uniformity or consistency. For example, the measurement of variation in share prices and their comparison with respect to different companies over a period of time requires the measurement of variation. Then again, the measurement of variation in the length of stay of patients in a hospital every month, it may be used to set staffing levels, number of beds, number of doctors and other trained staff, patient admission rates, etc. These measures of variation, they can also facilitate the use of other statistical techniques such as correlation and regression analysis, hypothesis testing, forecasting, quality control and so on. So this is the significance of the measures of dispersion or variation. Now let us see the essential requisites for a measure of variation. So for a good measure of variation or dispersion, the essential requisites are, firstly, it should be rigidly defined. Then secondly, it should be based on all the values or elements in the data set. Thirdly, it should be calculated easily, quickly and accurately. Then fourthly, it should not be unduly affected by fluctuations of sampling and also by the extreme observations. And it should be amenable to further mathematical or algebraic manipulations. Now let us see regarding the classification of the various measures of dispersion. So classification, here classification is, as such, it has been grouped in two categories. First, absolute and relative measures, and then we have the distance and measures and average deviation measures. So let us see one by one what we mean by all this. Now absolute measures, they are described by a number or value to represent the amount of dispersion, variation or differences amongst the values in the data set. So such a number or value is expressed in the same unit of measurement as the set of values in the data, such as rupees, inches, feet, kilograms, tons, etc. So such measures, what they do, they help in comparing two or more sets of data in terms of absolute magnitude of variation. Okay. Provided the variable values are expressed in the same unit of measurement and they have almost the same average value. Now the relative measures, they are described as the ratio of a measure of absolute variation to an average and called as coefficient of variation. The word coefficient, what it means? It means a number that is independent of any unit of measurement. So while computing the relative variation, the average value used as base should be the same from which the absolute deviations were calculated. Now another classification of the measures of dispersion is based on the method employed for their calculation. So these are called distance measures and average deviation measures. See, the distance measures, they describe the spread or dispersion of values of a variable in terms of difference among values in the data set. And the average deviation measures, they describe the average deviation for a given measure of central tendency. Okay, so one by one now we will start seeing these different measures of dispersion. Now this range, it is as such, it is the most simple of measure of dispersion, and it is based on the largest and smallest values in the data. So difference between the largest and smallest value in the given data set, it is called as the range. So range is h minus l, highest value, minus lowest value. And then we have the coefficient of the range, which is the relative measure of range, and it is obtained by using this formula h minus l divided by h plus l. Okay, so this range, it just covers the highest and lowest observed values in the data set, and it measures the dispersion within the interval in the most direct possible way. So what you see on the screen is the data. These are the sales figures of a company for say last 12 months. Now we have to find the range and the coefficient of range. So the range formula, of course, it is given by the highest value minus the lowest value. So in our data set, the highest value is 92 and the lowest value is 80. So the range is 12. And the coefficient of range is h minus l divided by h plus l. So this is 92 minus 80 divided by 92 plus 80. Okay, so that is 12 by 172. If you round this up to the 4 decimal places, then we are getting 0.0698. If you wish to round it up to 2 decimal places, then you will get 0.070. So this is how we calculate the range and the coefficient of range. So now we will see some advantages of the range. Some major advantages are like this, that first of all, the range is independent of the measure of the central tendency. So earlier you must have seen the video on measure of central tendency. Again, the link is given in the description box and you can go through. Okay, so it is easy to calculate and also it is easy to understand. It is also useful in the cases where the purpose is only to find out the extent of extreme variation, such as, for example, industrial quality control, temperature, rainfall, etc. Okay, so wherever we have the need for just knowing extreme values, there it is very useful to use this particular measure of dispersion. However, having said all this, there are also some disadvantages. Now this calculation of range is based only on two values, that means the largest and the smallest in the data set. So therefore, all the other observations or values, they are not taken into account. Since this is the way the calculation is done, so it is influenced by these two extreme values and completely independent of the other values. Okay, so there can be a situation where a range of two data sets can be same, but the two data sets are different in overall dispersion of the values. Then this value is also sensitive to changes in sampling. That means different samples of the same size from the same population, they may have widely different ranges. Now for some applications of the range. Range, it can be useful in calculating fluctuations, say for example fluctuation in share prices and other commodities that are very sensitive to price changes from one period to another. It can be used in quality control, especially in industrial quality control. Okay, this is done by preparing suitable control charts. So these charts are based on setting an upper control limit, that is a range, and a lower control limit again, which is also a range, within which these produced items shall be accepted. The variation in the quality beyond these ranges, of course, it requires the necessary correction in the production process or in the system. Then another application is in the area of weather forecasts. So this concept of range, it can be used to determine the difference between maximum and minimum temperature or say rainfall by the meteorological departments. So that knowledge can be used by the general public. So these are some of the application areas of the range. Now the limitations or disadvantages of the range, they can be partially overcome by using another method of dispersion, another measure of dispersion, which measures the spread over the middle half of the values in the data set. If you do this, then the influence of the outliers is minimized in the calculation of the range. So, since a large number of values in the data set lie in the central part of the frequency distribution, it is necessary to study the interquartile range. Okay. Now, to compute this value, the entire data set is divided into 4 parts, each of which contains 25% of the observed values. So the quartiles are the highest values in each of these 4 parts, and the interquartile range is a measure of dispersion in the data set between the third quartile Q3 and the first quartile Q1. So that means it is Q3 minus Q1. In other words, the interquartile range or deviation, it is the range for the middle 50% of the data. Now half the distance between Q1 and Q3, it is called the semi-interquartile range or the quartile deviation, and it is given by the formula Q3 minus Q1 divided by 2. Likewise, we can also calculate the coefficient of quartile deviation. See, since quartile deviation is an absolute measure of variation, therefore its value gets affected by the size and the number of observed values in the data set. So thus the quartile deviation of 2 or more than 2 sets of data may differ. So due to this reason, to compare the degree of variation in different sets of data, we calculate the relative measure corresponding to the quartile deviation, and this relative measure is called the coefficient of the quartile deviation. So it is calculated as Q3 minus Q1 divided by Q3 plus Q1. So in the video on measures of central tendency, already it has been discussed what are the quartiles and how they are calculated. Now we are seeing a diagrammatic representation of the interquartile range or deviation. So over here you can see that the median is placed towards the center. However, you should remember that the median and quartiles, they divide the data into equal numbers of values, but do not necessarily divide the data into equally wide intervals. So between Q1 and Q2, first quartile and second quartile, which is the median also, we have 25% of the values, and between Q2 and Q3 we have the next 25% of values. So the interquartile range is between Q1 and Q3 like was described earlier. Now we have got remaining 50% values are divided between lowest value and Q1 and the highest value and Q3, which is the third quartile. So a smaller value of quartile deviation, it indicates high uniformity or less variance among the middle 50% observed values around the median value. On the other hand, if we have a high value of quartile deviation, it indicates a large variation among the middle 50% observed values. So now we will see one example. We have to calculate the range and the interquartile range, and then we have to interpret whatever answer we have got. So the table which you are seeing here on the screen, it represents the responses from 55 students to the question about how much money they have spent every day. So using this information, we have to calculate the range, interquartile range, and then we have to interpret whatever answer that we have obtained. So first of all, you can see that all the data has been arranged over here like this in ascending order, row wise. So we have started from 55 and row wise all the data has been arranged. Some values are of course repeated, and then the lowest value is 55 and the highest value is 150. So like this way, first the raw data has been arranged in ascending order in this table. Now we will calculate the range and the interquartile range. So for this calculation, see, it is calculation I am showing in the graph. See, median is 105. Now it is suggested that you should see the video, recall the video or the information given in the video of measures of central tendency and how we are calculating median for this type of data. So in this particular case, median is 105. So from this value of 105, there are 27 values which are at or they are below 105, and another 27 are there which are at or above of 105. So that is why you can see the spread over here, that is 13 values and 13 values this side. So in the middle is 105, right? So we have got 27 values which are below 105 and another 27 which are 105. Now the lower quartile, that is Q1, is the 14th value from the bottom of the data, okay, and it comes out to be equal to 94. Once again, it is suggested that you should take a look once again at the video on measures of central tendency and see how this Q1 has been calculated. Likewise, we are finding Q3 is equal to 120. Okay, so the 55 values, how they have been partitioned is given in the diagram. The interquartile range, it is 120 minus 94, which is equal to 26, and the range on the other hand is 150 minus 55, that is equal to 95. So the middle 50% of the data, it falls in relatively a narrow range of only rupees 26. What this means? This means that the responses are more densely clustered near the center of the data and more spread out towards the extremes. So for instance, lowest 25% of the students had responses ranging over 55 to 94. See, 55 is the lowest range, and from there up to Q1, that is 94, right? So 25% was in that particular range. So that is 94 minus 55 means 39 rupees. While the next 25%, it has got responses ranging over 94 to 105. That means only 11 rupees range. Similarly, in the third quarter, the responses are from 105 to 120. So that is why only rupees 15. While the top 25%, it has responses in the interval of 120 to 150. That means rupees 30. So the median and the quartiles, they divide the data into equal numbers of values, but they do not necessarily divide the data into equally wide intervals. So you can again listen to the section again, and it is suggested that you also calculate the value of Q1, Q2, which is the median in this case, and Q3 by referring to the earlier video on measures of central tendency. Now regarding some advantages and disadvantages. As such, first we will see some of the advantages. So it is not difficult to calculate, and the value as such is not affected by the extreme values in the data set. Again, it is a very appropriate measure of dispersion for a data set which is summarized in open-end class intervals. And because it is a positional measure of dispersion, therefore it is useful in case of the erratic or highly skewed distributions, where the other measures of dispersion get affected by extreme values in the data set. Now regarding some disadvantages, see, the value of the quartile deviation, it is based on the middle 50% observed values in the data set. Therefore, it cannot be considered as a good measure of dispersion, as it is not based on all the observations. Then the value of the quartile deviation is very much affected by the sampling fluctuations, and the quartile deviation, it has no relationship to any particular value or an average in the data set for measuring the dispersion. So its value is not affected by the distribution of the individual values within the interval of the middle 50% observed values. Now the range and quartile deviation, they indicate overall variation in the data set, but they do not indicate the spread or scatter around the central value, that is either the mean, median or mode. So to understand the nature of distribution of the values in the data set, we need to measure the spread of values around the mean to indicate how representative the mean is. So now we are going to discuss two more measures of dispersion in order to measure the mean or average amount by which all the values in the data set, that is the population or sample, vary from their mean. So these measures, they deal with the average deviation from some measure of central tendency, which is usually the mean or median. So these measures are the mean absolute deviation, which is also known as average deviation, and secondly the variance and standard deviation. Now the mean of deviations of individual values in the data set from their actual mean is always 0. So such a measure, it would be useless for us as an indicator of dispersion. So how can this problem be solved? Now this problem, it can be solved in two ways. First is ignore the signs of the deviations by taking their absolute value. And secondly, you can square the deviations because the square of the negative number is positive. So since the absolute difference between a value of an observation from the arithmetic mean is always a positive number, so whether it is less than or whether it is more than the arithmetic mean, therefore we just take the absolute value of such a deviation from the arithmetic mean or the median. So taking the average of these deviations from the arithmetic mean, we get a measure of dispersion which is called the mean absolute deviation, shortened to MAD. So these are the formulas which you are seeing on the screen. In case of the population, then 1 upon capital N. So capital N indicates the total frequency, right, total number, and then we have summation I is equal to 1 upon N. You can see the straight lines over there. So these straight lines, two lines between this xi minus mu, that indicates that this is the absolute value. That means the sign is now being ignored. Whether the difference generates a plus sign or whether it generates a minus sign, it is going to be taken in the positive sense only. Similarly, we have mean absolute deviation for the sample. Here again total number of points in the sample, okay, and then here we have got again difference from the mean, and this is the mean of the sample. So that's why this different notation is being used. Mu over here to indicate this is the mean of the population, and over here x bar being used to indicate that this is the mean of the sample. So deviation, it may be taken from the mean or the median. And again for a grouped frequency distribution, here then we have got the same formula, but obviously being used in the sense of grouped frequency. So 1 upon summation Fi, summation I is equal to again 1 to N, right, and here Fi into again the absolute differences, that is absolute deviations, xi minus x bar. So you can again refer to the videos where we were seeing the method of representing the data in tabular form and just go through this frequency distribution etc. again. So while calculating the mean absolute deviation, the median is also considered for computing. Why? Because the sum of the absolute values of the deviations from the median is smaller than that from any other value. But in general, the arithmetic mean is used for this particular purpose. The mean absolute deviation, it is useful in situations where occasional large and erratic deviations are likely to occur. So the standard deviation, which uses the squares of these large deviations, as such it tends to overemphasize them. Now we are seeing the coefficient of the mean absolute deviation. So the relative measure of the mean absolute deviation, it is called the coefficient of mean absolute deviation. And how it is obtained? It is obtained by mean absolute deviation divided by either the mean or the median. In case this particular value is to be obtained in terms of percentage, then you just multiply this value by 100 and you will get the value of the coefficient of MAD in terms of the percentage. Now we shall see one example. So the situation is like this, that the number of visitors seen in a cinema hall for a sample of 5 days in the last month, they are 153, 147, 151, 156 and 153. We have to find the mean deviation and interpret the finding. So first of all, The calculation obviously is according to the formula 1 upon n summation xi minus x bar, where this summation xi minus x bar will be the absolute deviations. So first of all we need to calculate the mean itself. So mean is x bar, which is summation x upon n. So these are the x values and divided by n. So total number of values is 5. So summation x, that means you have to add all this divided by 5, that gives you 152. And now you have to take the deviation of each value from this mean. So here what is the calculation? 153 minus 152, 1. Likewise 147 minus 152, that is minus 5. And same way over here minus 1, then this is 4, this is 1. And absolute deviation, now the signs are being neglected, so everything is going to be taken in the positive sense. So this will be 1, 5, 1, 4 and 1. Now we will calculate the mean deviation. So mean absolute deviation as per the formula earlier shown, 1 upon n summation mod of modulus of xi minus x bar. So by adding all the modulus values, it gives us the value 12, divided by n is 5, which is equal to 2.4. So of course we are talking about people over here, so we'll round it up to approximately 3 visitors. That is the mean absolute deviation from the mean of 152 visitors per day. Now we shall see some advantages and disadvantages of the mean absolute deviation. So first, regarding the advantages. So the calculation of the MAD, it is based on all the observations in the distribution, and it shows the dispersion of values around the measure of central tendency. Then the value of MAD is easy to calculate, and therefore it is popular amongst those users, even though they may not be so familiar with statistical methods. So while calculating the MAD, equal weightage is given to each observed value, and thus it indicates that how far each observation is spread from either the mean or the median. Now the average deviation from the mean is always 0 in any data set. So the mean absolute deviation, it avoids this problem by using absolute values to eliminate the negative signs. Now regarding the disadvantages, so since the algebraic signs are ignored while calculating the MAD, and if the signs are not ignored, then the sum of the deviations taken from arithmetic mean will be 0, and close to 0 when deviations are taken from the median. Then next, the value of the MAD is considered to be the best when the deviations are taken from the median. But however, the median does not provide a satisfactory result in case of a high degree of variability in the data set. And sometimes the MAD is considered sort of unwieldy in mathematical discussions. So these are some of the disadvantages of the mean absolute deviation. Now another way to disregard the signs of the negative deviations from the mean is to square them. So instead of calculating the absolute value of each deviation from the mean, what we do is we square the deviations from the mean. Then the sum of all such squared deviations, it is divided by the number of observations in the data set. So this is called as the population variance, and it is denoted by this sigma squared. So formula will be sigma squared is equal to 1 upon n summation, of course I will go from 1 to n, xi minus mu whole square. So this is the average of the sum of all the squared deviations. Okay, and if this deviation is taken from the actual population mean, then the formula becomes this way. So 1 upon n summation I is equal to 1 to n xi squared minus mu squared. But if the deviation is taken from the assumed mean, where this assumed mean will be capital A. So we have seen one earlier example in the measures of central tendency where we have seen this concept of assumed mean. So this is the deviation from the assumed mean. So if the deviation is taken in this way, then the formula becomes sigma squared is equal to summation d squared divided by n minus summation d divided by n whole square. So since this sigma squared is the average or mean of squared deviations from the arithmetic mean, it is also sometimes called as the mean square average. Now the population variance is basically used to measure the variation amongst the values of the observations in a population. Now the numerical value of the population or sample variance, it is difficult to interpret because it is expressed in square units. So therefore what we do is we take a positive square root of the variance, which is called as the standard deviation, or it is also called as root mean square deviation. So the standard deviation of the population, it is denoted by sigma. Okay, now for ungrouped data, the formula is very simple. Just you have to take the square root of the variance and that will give you the standard deviation, which is sigma. For the grouped data, this is the formula. So in this formula, f is the frequency of each class interval. Then this capital N is summation of f. Then h is the width of the class interval. And this d is equal to m minus a divided by h, where m is the mid value of each class interval and a is any constant, which is also called as the assumed mean. So in this manner we can calculate the standard deviation for the grouped data. So now we shall solve an example based on variance and standard deviation. So the wholesale prices of a commodity for 7 consecutive days in a month is given to us, and the variance and the standard deviation has to be calculated. So now we are going to start with the calculation part. So we are preparing a table now. Here we have the observations. So first of all, the mean has been calculated. How it has been calculated? Add all this and divide by 7. So 1820 divided by 7, that is 260. So mean x bar is equal to 260. Then since this is the requirement of our formula, so we will calculate now xi minus x bar. So each observation minus x bar. So 240 minus 260. So like that way minus 20, and then square of this xi minus x bar. So that is 400. Likewise, all this has been done for each value in the table, and then sum of all these squares has been calculated, and if you see the sum, it comes out to be equal to 1442. So now we are calculating the variance and the standard deviation. So variance formula, sigma squared is equal to 1 upon n summation xi minus x bar square. So in the earlier table, we have already done the summation calculation, and this is 1442 divided by n, which is 7. So we get 206. And standard deviation, it has been defined as square root of the variance. So this we are getting it as 14.353 rounded up to the third decimal place. So now what we are going to do, we are going to use the same example discussed earlier, but the calculation is going to be done by making use of the assumed mean, and in this case we will take the assumed mean to be equal to 255. So accordingly, as per the needs of the formula, we will calculate the deviation from the assumed mean and then the square of the deviation. So first here we will calculate the deviation, then next the square of the deviations, and then the sum of the deviations. So let us see whether there is any change in the result or not. So now we will do the calculation. So here the sigma is given by, that is standard deviation, root of summation d square by n minus summation d divided by n whole square. So from the table you can see that this value comes out to be 231 and this comes out to be 25. So this is root of 206, and like before we are getting this value as 14.353. Rounding up has been done to 3 decimal places. So now the question is when to make use of this assumed mean method. So when the actual arithmetic mean is not a whole number, at that time this particular method is preferred. So say for example in our problem the mean came out to be 260, but let us say it was not 260 but it was 260.75. Then in such a case we make use of assumed mean and take a number which is closer to the actual mean, or a number which is the somewhat the central value, that can be chosen as the assumed mean for the purpose of the calculation. So now we will see an example which is based upon the grouped data. So here the information has been given about 100 manufacturing companies and the profit that they have earned. That means the profit range has been given and the number of companies, which is of course 100. That particular data has been presented and we have to calculate the standard deviation of the profit earned. So once again we are now going to prepare the table. So you can see the table on the screen. So based on the formula requirements the table has been prepared. So here it is group data, so we have taken the mid value, right, and then we have found out the deviation by making use of this formula m minus a divided by h, where m is the midpoint, a is the assumed mean, which in this case we have taken to be as 35, and divided by the width of the class, which is 10 in this case. So by doing the calculation we find we are getting all these values. Then f is of course the frequency. Then in the next column we have got the multiplication of f into d. Then after that the last column is f into d square. So we are squaring this and multiplying it by the frequency value. And lastly over here the summation of these values is obtained. Why? Because we require this in the formula to calculate the standard deviation of this grouped data. So the formula as discussed earlier is sigma is equal to root of summation f d square divided by n minus summation f d divided by n whole square multiplied by h. So using the calculations done earlier, these are the numbers for this. So summation f d square is 200, n is 100, summation f d is minus 28, okay, again n is 100 whole square multiplied by 10, which is the width of the class interval. So this is the answer which we get, which is the required standard deviation for the profits earned. So now about the advantages and disadvantages of using the standard deviation. First about the advantages. The value of the standard deviation is based on every observation in a set of data. So it is the only measure of variation capable of algebraic treatment and less affected by fluctuations of sampling as compared to the other measures of dispersion. It is possible to calculate the combined standard deviation of two or more sets of data. Then the standard deviation has a definite relationship with the area under the symmetric curve of a frequency distribution. Because of this, the standard deviation is called a standard measure of the dispersion. The standard deviation is also useful in further statistical investigations. For example, the standard deviation plays a very vital role in comparing skewness, correlation and so on, and it's also widely used in the sampling theory. But however, there are some disadvantages as well. As compared to other measures of variations, calculations of the standard deviation are difficult. Again, while calculating standard deviation, more weight is given to extreme values and less to those near the mean. So since for calculating the standard deviation, the deviations from the mean are squared. So therefore, large deviations when they are squared are proportionately more than small deviations. Say for example, the deviations 2 and 10 are in the ratio 1:5, but their squares 4 and 100 are in the ratio is of 1:25.